From childhood, we're taught a simple equation: put in the effort, follow the standardized path, and success follows. In reality, it's a precise screening mechanism. Standard economic theory argues that this system is rational. It suggests society relies on these explicit, public channels to efficiently screen the population and reward the most capable individuals. Look at these exam tickets. The barcode and strict ID photo symbolize a quantified, explicit system, where a high score dictates exactly who receives resources. The scale is staggering. Thousands funnel into a civil service examination building. This sheer density validates the orthodox view that public competition drives social mobility. Structural sociology offers a very different reading. It argues that accepting these public channels as the sole path for advancement traps you in a cognitive cage, one designed by the people who actually set the rules. This brings us to the dual structure thesis. Anthropologists observe that any society allocates resources through a bifurcated system: the explicit rules you see and the implicit rules you don't. The explicit rules, the massive public exams, open job applications, and standardized metrics, exist primarily to maintain macro stability and filter the baseline population. The implicit rules form an opaque, subterranean network. This hidden architecture governs the actual flow of the highest value, transformative resources. When you miss out on a major opportunity, it rarely means you failed to work hard enough in the public arena. It means the game concluded before you were even allowed to walk onto the field. If this implicit system dictates outcomes, a rational market observer has to ask, why wouldn't the people controlling these resources want to pull the absolute best talent or the highest bids from that massive public pool? This chart visualizes an economic concept called information rent, the profit generated strictly by controlling asymmetric data. On the left is the linear public release of information. On the right, a non-linear network of private implicit connections. Watch the bypass mechanism in action. While the standard system, marked as Node A here, sits dormant behind a barrier waiting for a public announcement, the implicit network executes a stealth vector. Node B bypasses the public barrier entirely, securing the resource upstream, long before any data goes public. In the corporate sector, premium executive roles are filled internally or through private referrals. By the time the public pipeline activates and the job is posted online, the position is already taken. In enterprise operations, lucrative project tenders are conceptually divided among insiders. The orange network absorbs the fractures of the contract before the formal bidding process begins. And in finance, true investment alpha remains brightly lit within the closed network. Alpha is a metric representing a strategy's ability to beat the broader market. Those specific wealth-generating codes are shared strictly in private nodes, never on a public stage. A strict economist would argue that this completely opaque behavior damages overall market efficiency and limits total output. That is mathematically true, but irrelevant to the actors involved. Gatekeepers will always choose the massive, guaranteed personal returns of controlling asymmetric information over the marginal societal gains of hosting a fair public competition. If your entire strategy relies on executing visible tasks slightly better than the next person, you are severely miscalculating the game. You are sitting at the wrong poker table entirely. A common capitalist countermeasure proposes a simple fix. If the system runs on hidden networks, those on the outside should actively network upward to force their way into the inner circle. This diagram maps why that assumption is a psychological trap born of outgroup anxiety. It shows a vast cluster of isolated nodes, the outgroup, orbiting a highly connected central core. Network theory operates on a strict law. You cannot join a closed system as a peer unless you possess commensurate core capital. Watch the actual transaction of forced upward networking. The outgroup continuously drives attention, time, and capital inward toward the core nodes. The core absorbs these inbound vectors and grows larger. Notice the complete absence of outward flow. Zero reciprocal resources are directed back to the outgroup. This dynamic has spawned an entire parasitic industry. Individuals selling exclusive access, or expensive masterclasses, or elite networking groups are operating a secondary mechanism to extract rent from outgroup anxiety. True elite networks do not exist to socialize with the unleveraged. They exist to violently filter them out. Attempting to network upward without holding unique, exchangeable capital does not earn you a seat at the table. It simply transforms you into the resource being consumed by the people who already have one. If the implicit network systematically hoards high-value resources, what is the mathematical outcome for the massive population diligently following the explicit rules? The result is a hyper-competitive blood ocean. Look at this photograph of a recruitment board. The left side is packed with dense corporate requirements, sharply contrasting with the sterile interaction space on the right. The prize pool has been artificially shrunken, forcing intense competition. To maintain the illusion that merit still dictates outcomes, the system continuously shifts the goalposts. Educational inflation forces candidates to secure increasingly elite degrees just to qualify for baseline entry-level interviews. Corporate optimization demands exponentially longer working hours, while wages remain completely flat. The psychological burden compounds as individuals realize their baseline effort yields systematically lower returns than it did historically. The darkest success of this architecture is psychological. It forces the outgroup to look at structural shrinkage and internalize it as personal failure, repeating the mantra, "I just need to work harder." The explicit track functions exactly as designed. It operates as a vast, padded room built to absorb the excess labor and frustration of the masses, safely insulating the invisible extraction happening above. A skeptic might concede that this architecture exists, but ask a final question. Is individual exploitation of information asymmetry actually destructive to a nation, or is it merely the harsh reality of free markets? This 3D model visualizes a macroeconomic threshold known as societal liquidity, the exact point where individual rent-seeking metastasizes into systemic failure. Here, the blue public structures form the visible upper layers, while the orange implicit networks form a massive root system below. When society reaches a consensus where holding an information disparity is equated with justice, where hidden advantages are accepted as mere hustle, a catastrophic pivot occurs. The parallel tracks harden into impermeable casts. A thick barrier solidifies horizontally, severing all vertical flow lines between the blue upper layers and the orange roots. This triggers an internal brain drain. The most capable actors realize the visible game is rigged. Notice how the bright nodes in the blue structure extinguish, only to reappear deep within the orange root system. High-level talent stops trying to innovate or create value within the explicit rules. Instead, they dedicate their entire bandwidth to studying how to bypass rules, extract rent, and manipulate the implicit architecture. The result is total system freeze. As the glowing data flows turn a dead gray and the structure calcifies, societal liquidity evaporates. It looks stable from the outside, but internally the engine has rotted out. This economic stagnation triggers a secondary, more severe consequence: the total collapse of societal trust and the complete annihilation of the meaning behind honest effort. The era of telling the masses that effort strictly maps to success has to end. Forcing this invisible architecture into the light is a biological necessity for a society's survival. Only by destroying systemic opacity can we ensure that the honest effort of the individual finally maps to the true flow of resources.